Thank you, Dakota. If you're solving problems in 5 minutes, I need some help. Okay. That sounds way more impressive than I am. My name is Jodi, and I am a proud T-bird. First of all, I want to do something. I want to take a selfie with everyone. All right, everybody kind of get in there. I got to get in there because I told my husband I was coming to speak. Can you all hear me? I can talk louder. I was telling my husband I was going to come speak, and he said, well, who's going to show up? So I'm going to prove to him that I had a whole room full of people that showed up. He was worried that nobody would come. So I don't know if it's more pressure to be the first speaker or it's less pressure to be the first speaker because you have nothing to compare it to. Or if it's less pressure, because some of you have actually taken this class more than once. Raise your hand if you've taken this class more than once. So somebody said something that was worthwhile for you to come back. So I'm hoping that I do the same. And raise your hand if you're taking this because it's just an easy credit. Be honest. Professor Stillman, A's. They're being honest. How many of you decided to come today because my picture looked awesome and were like, yeah, that is impressive. I want to go see her. A. They're all getting A's. You're all getting A's, okay? So my name is Jodi. I'm a proud T-bird. And you're probably wondering to yourself, what is this young-ish lady doing speaking to our class today? And sorry, I'm holding this. I have nothing to attach it to. So I'm just going to hold it here. What does she have to say to an entrepreneurial class? How many of you are in the business school? Okay. Wow, quite a bit. How many of you are in communications? History? Okay, what else is everybody doing? Okay, undecided. Okay, again, honest, A. Well, I hope that I can say something that has some type of value to you because I have actually literally been in your, well, not literally because this is a brand new building, but I have been in your seats. I have been on campus. I'll tell you how I got my start at SUU, how I even came to be at SUU. I'm from Arizona. Anybody else from Arizona? What part? Yuma. Flag? So it's what?
It's a small town called Kanta.
Kanta. Oh, I know Kanta. So I'm from Kingman. It's a thriving metropolis. You guys don't say anything different, okay? Just let them believe that. Thriving metropolis in Arizona. I was wanting to go to ASU. But my parents really didn't want me to go there. And my dad, I grew up on a cattle ranch, and my dad had been hauling cattle up to Cedar City to the auction here. And he said, you know, there is this university, there's a school there. And I promised I wasn't going to date myself, but it had just turned into a university. So now you can go back and do the math, how old I am. It had just turned into the university. In fact, my freshman class was the first freshman class of the university. And he said, you've got to go to this, I think you're going to really like this school. And so I ended up coming up for a tour. I just did a self-guided tour. I didn't know any different, that I could probably have someone give me a tour, and automatically fell in love with the campus. But being from Arizona, I had to pay out-of-state tuition, which meant that the prices were higher. There was a way to get in-state, but I had to come early in the summer, and I had to get a job. So my parents were like, well, that's what we're gonna do. So my dad, the only other person he knew in Cedar City, it wasn't even in Cedar City, it was in New Harmony, was a cattle rancher. And so the cattle rancher said, oh, I can get her a job. So guess what my first job was? Here. It was working at the auction. You're right, I was working at the auction. And while I was doing my orientation at the auction, and the auction is where you buy and sell cattle, if you all go out to the market to eat, you're at the auction. While I was getting my orientation, my mom was like, oh, that is just not a good job for her. So she went to Walmart and applied for a job for me at Walmart. And I got the job. So I only worked at the auction for like a day and a half. So why do I tell that story? You're going to find out later why I told that story. But that was my first start at SUU. I didn't know a single person. So I was here by myself, and it was the best decision that I ever made. In fact, my sister that was going to BYU After a year, she transferred down, and then my little sister was in high school. She graduated, and she came here. And she actually still lives here today. She's actually a doctor, so if any of you get sick and need some help, Dr. Blake, she's really, really good. She gives good IVs. I know, I've had 13 of them. So I was her guinea pig for when she was passing all of her boards. So she's very, very good. Okay, so I'm here in Cedar City, and what do? I don't know anybody. So I just start signing up for everything. You've got all these tables out here this week. Go sign up. Go sign up for every single thing you can. Every single thing you can. I was in the Greek system. I was in student government. I was on the Walkenians. Do they still have the Walkenians? Any Walkenians in here? Shoot, another A. I was involved in concert promoting. They started doing concert promoting, and my dad had been a concert promoter, so I was like, hey, I know how to promote a concert. I didn't really, but I did. I promoted 3 of them. So I just got involved because you know what this school gives you? An opportunity to be involved. An opportunity to get involved in every single aspect and to try things that you necessarily wouldn't try otherwise. Maybe you didn't try in high school, but here it's an opportunity. I want you to think about this room. And back when I was in school, the campus was a little bit smaller, but people that I met in campus and during my time here at SUU are now doctors, they're now professors, they're now in government, they're mayors, they're governors, they are everywhere in the community. And I am so fortunate that I was able to be such a part of that population, because there isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't meet someone from SUU. And so I just want you to kind of keep that in mind as you're here at the school. All right, so I'm a lobbyist. Does anybody, and I won't make you answer it, does anybody, raise your hand if you think you know what a lobbyist is. That's actually pretty good. How many of you have heard of a lobbyist before? How many of you have heard it in a negative light? You're not offending me. F's, professor, no, I'm teasing. Okay, a lobbyist. So there's a couple ways to look at it. A lobbyist can be proactive and defensively. So the conduit between, and I specialize in state corporate affairs. So I do mainly state, I do some municipal, and I do some federal, but mainly what I do is the state, which means the state legislature. So the representatives and the senators in the state legislature, I am the middle piece, I'm the conduit of government and business, and I'm in the middle. So I connect the two. So for instance, one of my clients would say, hey, we've got this issue we want to have passed. And so I will go to a legislator and find someone to sponsor the bill, and then I'll educate the legislature to pass that bill. Or a client will say, I'll say to the client, there's this bill, there's this bill, there's this bill, and there's this bill. And they'll say, oh, we hate that bill. We love that bill. We need that one amended. Kill that bill. We need to fix that bill. And based on what their recommendations are, I go back and educate the legislature to try and make it productive for my clients. So I represent a whole array. So how many of you think you have a lobbyist right now? Okay. How many of you have ever met a lobbyist? Me? I'm the best one. No, I'm teasing. Do you think I look like a lobbyist? So there's a lot of negative connotation to lobbyists, that they're just kind of out for money, out for power. But actually, it's quite the opposite. I get paid because I have a good reputation. When I go and tell a legislator some false information, guess what? Next time they're not going to vote with me. They're going to say, oh, last time, you know what? I don't trust you. So my reputation is the biggest thing that I have. So I'm constantly working on my reputation. So let's go back to the lobbying thing. So nobody in the room thinks you have a lobbyist, right? Okay. I think that I probably represent you, every single one of you in this room, in some form or fashion. Okay? So I'm just going to name a couple of my clients, and if you've used their service or have their service, I want you to stand. Okay, so I'll start with some of the smaller ones. I shouldn't say smaller in, I'm thinking smaller in how many of you would do it. If you've ever rented a car from Enterprise Car Rental, stand up. And keep standing. If you've ever flown on a Delta Airlines flight. If you have AT&T for your cell service. Okay, we're getting there. If you've ever used an Adobe product. If you've opened up something in Adobe, an attachment or something. Is everybody standing? Do we still have some sitting? Okay, do you use a bank? Do you have a bank account? Yeah. Okay, anybody else? You have a bank? Okay, is everybody standing? Okay, I am your lobbyist. Go ahead and sit down. So those are some of the companies that I represent. So you don't necessarily have a care what the company does, but I promise that the company is always looking out for you, and primarily in taxes and tax structure and being able to keep costs low for consumers. So that's primarily what I do for the majority of my clients, is making sure that they can be successful, because there's nothing worse than regulation and burdensome on their part from their federal government. So you all can go back to your apartments tonight and say, hey, I got a lobbyist that's representing my needs. There's lobbyists that represent everything. Dairy farmers, librarians. I mean, you think of something, there is a lobbyist that represents you for your interests and your needs. Does anybody have a question along that yet? Okay. So those are some of the companies that I represent here in Utah. I represent a lot of Fortune 100 and 500 companies, as mentioned. I also represent a lot of smaller associations. I wasn't going to single you out, but if you have ever been to a pawn shop, I'm your lobbyist. If you've ever needed a bail bond, I'm your lobbyist. So those are the things that I work large companies, and then I also do small trade associations. I represent the trucking industry, so all the truckers that are up and down the road. I represent the trucking association and their needs. And you'd say, well, what do they need needs for? Well, they certainly need good roads, because if they don't have good roads, they aren't able to transport their goods. So they're always looking for ways to improve our transportation system. And they also need a lot of protections against other types of businesses that are encroaching on them. You know, like the online sales has been a big hit to them, although they still have to move services and goods. Anywhere you go, everything you have today was probably moved on a truck at some point. Your backpacks, your laptops, your clothing, your hats, your shoes, all of it was moved. So some of the more fascinating clients that I have is I represent Delta, and Delta's hub is in Utah, which there's no other big, Delta doesn't, the next biggest hub that Delta has is in Kentucky. So the fact that we have a hub in Salt Lake City is a really, really big deal, because it is our way to get folks traveling west. So a lot of times when you take a flight to Salt Lake, and there's a lot of people that are already on that flight, when you get on, it's because they've already been transported somewhere else to this hub. And there's a lot of fascinating issues with Delta. All right, so back to my early days at SUU. How did I become a lobbyist? I guarantee you nobody, very few, say, I want to grow up to be a lobbyist. It's just not something you grow up to be. So how I got my start is I was attending class just like you were, and guess what? The cattle rancher from New Harmony, who got me my first job, said, Jodi, I need an intern. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he said, I can teach you what you need to know, but it was the way you were raised. I can't teach the kids they're sending me from the University of Utah. Meaning I grew up on a cattle ranch. He's a cattle rancher. I knew his life. I knew his livelihood. Politics was something, I didn't even mention this yet. So my dad got elected into the Arizona legislature the same year that this cowboy from New Harmony was elected in the legislature. One in Utah, one in Arizona. So my dad was elected in 1993. And I'm in college. There I am, telling you my age, okay? So I'm in college and he calls and I'm just like, nope, that is something that, because you can't go anywhere. Does anybody have a legislator in their family or an elected official? Okay, then you won't know if I'm telling you the truth or not. No, I am. I really am. It's very hard on the family because there's no stop. It is always someone's constantly wanting to talk to you about an issue. Whether you go to the grocery store where you're pumping gas. We have been water skiing on Lake Mead, and a boat will pull up next to us and say, hey, Joe, I got to talk to you about an issue. It is constant. A legislator can be as busy as they want to be and can fill up every single minute of their day with someone asking or needing or wanting to talk to them about something. So I was looking at it from a perspective of, I just don't want to get involved in that. And so I called my dad and I said, Dad, you're never going to guess who just called me. And he said, okay, I'll pick you up tomorrow. And I said, oh, Dad, that's not what I'm interested in. He goes, you know what? If you learn one thing, you'll be a better person. So here I am off to Salt Lake City to do this internship. And I didn't have a lot of experience, just, what had been happening at home. But it came very natural. It's almost like a light switch went off, and it's like, this is what you know. This is what you know about. And the process, even though it's extremely convoluted, and there's many, 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 many players, it just made sense to me. And so I excelled. I did really good at my internship. Again, an opportunity that SUU gave me. I was the first intern to serve at the legislature that was recognized by the school. One other kid had done it, but he had done it on his own, and the school didn't know he had done it. So he just took a semester off and did it. So they didn't know what to do with me. So guess how many credit hours I got for doing an internship? You all are gonna die. 21. 21. Now, back then we were on the quarter system, so we weren't on a semester. So we had higher credit hours. So I got 21. So I came back to SUU with all this, with 21 credit hours of a field that I hadn't even looked into yet. So all of a sudden I was like, oh. So I went into poli-sci. So my degree's in interpersonal communication and poli-sci. And I think they both have helped me tremendously into what I do. But you don't need really a degree to lobby. Anybody can lobby. It's finding clients to pay you to lobby is the hard part. So I did my internship, and here I am. So the next job I got was higher ed called just out of the blue. The commissioner of higher education said, hey, we're starting a new program this year. We're gonna have a student be the voice of all students throughout all 9 universities and institutions throughout the state, and they're gonna be the student lobbyist. And there may still be one now. I was the first student lobbyist, so I was representing the needs of the students. The regents have their agenda, the school presidents have their agenda, and the students were having their own agenda, and I was representing that. And I really got to know the process through that, because a lot of it deals with appropriations, through money, and then also through standing committees. So it came really, really natural for me. And then I came back to SUU, and I had missed 2 winter quarters, and I needed 1 class to finish. So I came back and I finished that 1 class, and I got my degree. Had all this experience and thought, you know what, everybody's gonna line up to hire me. They're gonna just be like, yes, that's what I want her on my team. But I was very young and a female in a predominantly, overly predominant male world. So I sent my resume out to all these lobbyists, and I said, interview me, blah, 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 blah. 6 months goes by and nobody. So I was working for my parents for their company, and it was really looking like I was gonna have to take over that company, and I didn't want to. And then one day my dad was on a tour of the West with Speaker Gingrich at the time, and I said, Dad, here's my resume. I'd really like to stay in Utah, but at this point, I'll take anything. So my dad was having dinner with the Speaker of the House from Utah that night, and we were family friends. We knew each other pretty well. And there was another lobbyist who's actually my partner today, was at that dinner, and the speaker said, you should hire her. And this was the reason. Because she knows the cowboys. And at that point in the legislature, the Cowboy Caucus, there's always different caucuses of factions that have the power or wield the authority. It was the Cowboys at that time. There were more cowboys or ranchers in the legislature at that time than there were even businessmen. So I automatically had an in because I knew their lingo. I knew their stuff. And so they actually hired me to do a committee called the Western States Coalition, where it was all the Western states got together and tried to do issues for the West, specifically for the West. So that was my big start. And then my business partner hired me because that was a niche in the legislature that he did not know. And so that was, like I say, anybody can lobby. It's finding someone to pay you to do it is the hard part. Well, he paid me because I had a whole section of the legislature that I could go and talk to, and they trusted me because they knew my background. I knew what they were talking about. So that's how I got my start. So go back to the whole auction day that I worked there for one day. Who would have thought that would have been the setup for my entire career? And now I am representing some of the greatest companies around. So remember who you are sitting in this chair today, because it can happen to you. It can absolutely happen to you. And the people that you meet today are going to be to help you get that job you want later on. I guarantee it, because I know it's happened and it continues to happen. And you know, for instance, the governor's chief of staff was a student here at SUU. So I don't go hardly any, the director of the Department of Natural Resources, the deputy director, he was a student here. So my paths cross with SUU grads all the time. So even though you think maybe somebody isn't going to be the next startup company, you never know. You never know. So utilize your resources and your networking here. There's lots of opportunities. So I'm going to talk about a few other things that I have gotten involved with just recently. And then I'll leave some time for Q&A if you guys want to ask any questions. So my son, I have a 11-year-old son. And when he was 18 months old, he was diagnosed with developmental delays and primarily speech delays. And so he wasn't communicating, and hardly anybody could understand him. I could understand him because I'm his mom, but most people couldn't. So we started going down this path of trying to find the best education we could for him, and learning what his strengths were and where his success points were. And so I finally figured out that his most successful points were all geared around the arts. He can learn something if he's got a costume of Batman on or something and he's playing a role, but you take that costume away and he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. So the arts was a big thing, so I started looking for schools that integrated the arts. And a lot of schools are kind of taking that component away. And so what did I do? I started a school. So my school starts actually in the fall, and it's a charter school, and we partnered with Beverly Sorensen, and it's an arts integrated school. So every kid will have just as much art time as they do as academic time. And it will be everything from playwriting to set making to makeup to costume design to cellist to singing to dancing. It will be everything. And it will give the kids an opportunity to learn, because that's the way that they learn. Not every child is this going to be successful for. And my son, actually, he's going to be in 6th grade next year, and he's not even going to get to go to the school. But I felt so strongly about doing that for kids that learn in a different way. And that's another thing that SUU was really, really good at. And I probably shouldn't admit this to you, but I'm going to. I was not great at math. I still am not great at math. I tell people I deal in the millions. I don't need to worry about the little decimals and stuff. So I didn't do very great in math. My little sister went to school here too, and we took a math class together in the summer. I can't even remember what summer it was. And she did very well. And the professor could tell that I really wasn't learning. He could tell, she could tell, it was a she. And she said, you know what? I'm not doing my job because you're not learning it, but your little sister's getting it. So why don't you have her teach you? So my sister would take the test, then the teacher would give her the answers, and then she would help me. And you know that, even though you have a math answer, you've got to explain how you get there. But I was so grateful for that instructor to recognize that I didn't comprehend what she was teaching, but that she had the flexibility to teach me in a different way. And I did learn it. I did learn it, and I learned it better than I had ever learned it before in high school, junior high, everything, because I was seeing it right in front of me and I was able to apply it. Same goes for my son. That's the way that he learns. So that's why I started a school, and it's going to be opening in the fall. Second thing that I've been able to do is a group called the Utah Fallen Soldiers Association. So every year there is a ceremony up at the Capitol where we recognize anybody from any branch of military who has passed away that year. We recognize their family and the service that that family has provided this country. And we fly them in, regardless of where they're at, aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever wants to participate. We fly them in and we give them a whole day at the Capitol. We do a breakfast for them, we do a lunch, and then we do a citation where we read over the journals, and it is the most profound day. Has anybody done an internship at the Capitol? Do you remember the Fallen Soldiers Day? It is the most respectful event to see those families stand there, and every single senator and representative standing up and saying, you know, we're so grateful for the sacrifice that your family, we're grateful for you. And sometimes I think it's difficult, it's so difficult to go through that anyway, but then to not ever know what their life was worth to someone else. So we started that organization a couple years ago to expand it, to be able to get all the family in, because we could only afford to get a few of the, you know, like the parents or the spouse or something. So now we've expanded it. So that's been something that I have really, it's been a way I was really taught from a young age to be very respectful for the military and for anybody who serves. And is there anybody in here who has served? Thank you. A+. Thank you. My dad, to this day, if he sees anybody in uniform, regardless of where they're at, he will go and shake their hand. And so it's just always been something that has been a part of my life. So that was a way to kind of honor what I have been taught. Another thing that I've been able to work on is the Boys and Girls Clubs. Has anybody been to a club, Boys and Girls Club? Did you go to it when you were young? Was it a big part of your life at the time? So the Boys and Girls Club serves a huge need for kids who basically need a safe place. Need help with homework, want to shoot some hoops, want to just have a place to go. So I was asked to be involved, and I considered it a huge honor. And so I oversee the 9 clubs in the state. They've actually just consolidated some of them because they have a lot of need. They have a lot of, you know, nonprofit stuff that they've got to work on. They've got a lot of legal stuff, and so I volunteer to do that. And I'm not telling you this to boast or brag at all. I'm not telling you that at all. I'm telling you that because I once sat where you sat. And there were people who were saying things to me, coming and lecturing and giving these convocations, and I was so moved by what they were able to accomplish that I wanted that. But did I really think I'd get that? Not really. But I'm here today because of all the experiences that I had at SUU. Literally, when you walk off this campus, you can have a resume that's 10 pages deep just on things that you can go and participate with. And you can have experiences that I promise you at other schools you cannot have. You are simply a number. And you know, I think you all know your professor. And there are some classes that you can take where you would never even know them. There was a story once of this kid who was late, so the class was taking a test, and the teacher said, okay, pencils down, everybody come bring your paper. So everybody comes bring their paper. One kid is still writing, and the professor's like, time's up. And so the professor says, you need to bring it now, or you know, I'm not gonna give you any points. And he brings it up and he goes, do you know who I am? And the teacher said, no. And so he just shoved it right in with the stack. So teacher doesn't have any idea who that was that just did that. There are schools that certainly applies. So I just want you to know that I hope that this wasn't something you had to endure today. I hope you actually learned something, maybe a little bit enjoyed it. But I just wanted you to know that you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want because you are in an environment that wants you to succeed, that wants you to see your best potential. Never will you hear someone say, yeah, I just don't think you've got that. Or I don't think that's what you're going to do. They may steer you in a different direction, but they're never going to tell you that you can't do something. And that is precious. That is precious, and the decision that you made to be here and be at this university, I guarantee you will be life-changing. If I could go back to a period of time in my life and relive it over, it would be my days at SUU. I would certainly do it in a heartbeat. Even walking on campus just brings back such sweet memories. And I hope that you feel that way about your school. And if you don't right now, it's on you. There's something you need to find. There's something that you need to be doing and stepping out of your box. Okay, we've got just, I think, what do we have, 10 or 15 minutes? Okay. I could keep going on, but if you'd like to ask some questions, I would be happy to answer some.
So when you say you lobby for like truck drivers or Delta, is it only issues in Utah, or would that cover the nation?
So his question is, do I just, when I say that I represent somebody, is it for the nation or just Utah? It's primarily just for Utah. Because each legislature is so different. I would be kidding you if I said, oh, I can go to Montana and be effective. I don't know the people there. I don't know their process. So yeah, I just do it. But there are some initiatives that will pass here in Utah, and the company will say, I want you to take that and teach it to the others around the country. And we've done that in some, where we pass something here first, and then we take it to the rest of the states, and the states pass it. So, good question.
How do you find so much time to manage everything you're doing? Like your job, activities, the new school that you're trying to do?
Some days I am a rock star. Most days I'm not. I'm also a mother, and that really comes first. That really comes first. You know, that's the beauty about my job, is that every day is different. There's not a day that duplicates itself. There's never the same issue. There's never the same anything. You just learn to prioritize. I mean, a contract lobbyist, and that's what I am, and I'll explain the difference. A contract lobbyist is one that will take a contract with a company to represent a variety of needs. Okay, so I'm expected to be a quasi-expert on a lot of multiple issues because I have a lot of diversity. An in-house lobbyist is someone who works for the company but represents them at the legislature. There's volunteer lobbyists that just come up and volunteer because they care about an issue. There's also trade associations where they work for a trade association, so they represent the members of that association. But a contract lobbyist is, I'm used to juggling, I'm used to it. I'm used to talking about one issue this minute, then moving to the next issue, then moving to the next issue. So opening the school was not something I was really looking for. I just felt like I had to do it. So I have a really great team, really great board of directors, and so and we hired a really good educational firm that really does the majority of the work. I may be overstating when I say I'm doing it all on my own. I am not doing it on my own. I have a whole team that does it for a living, and I just had the vision. So. But you have to learn to say no, too. There are times where you have to learn just to say no. There are a lot of boards and things that they say, oh, you know, we'd really like for you to be on it. And I just have to say, I just can't. I just really can't. So, good question.
What was, when you went from, like, you weren't wanting to do the internship and then you went, do you remember that moment that you realized that it was something you wanted to do?
Yeah. It's actually kind of a funny thing. So the question is, at what point going from not wanting to do the internship were you like, okay, this is my thing? The director for the internship program got sick. And so she was over all the interns. And so I said, well, she was out one day and I said, I'll help run the group today, you know? And I remember just taking up that role just because there was a need, but thinking, oh, I'm really enjoying this. I think it was that point in the internship where I was like, okay, I'm really, like, this is really, I'm really not only interested in it, but I'm getting it. This is me. So it was more like I started to identify myself with it.
I would like to hear more information about your business partner and business and kind of how it works, how big's your team, what do you do?
So my business partner, he hired me in '98, pretty much right out of college. And it was just the two of us for a long time, for 15 years. We're kind of good cop, bad cop. His strengths are my weaknesses, vice versa. So we had a really good thing going. And we weren't looking to expand the firm, because there had been people who'd wanted to come in, but they primarily just want the salary. They don't necessarily want to do the job. And it was our livelihood, and we were supporting each other's families for a long time. We still do, I'm not saying that we don't. But we were just getting bigger and bigger and building upon a good reputation. And nobody likes to turn work down. So it was like, okay, we're either gonna have to bring someone on, or we're gonna have to start limiting our clients. A few people had come and wanted to be our partner, and we just never felt good about it. But a guy named Chris Blake, he was the former chief of staff to two speakers. He'd worked for the Olympics. He had worked for Salt Lake City. He'd worked for Quest. We had actually met him in '98. He was an intern for a senator, and we had just kept in good contact with him, and he was just someone that just fit really well with us. And we were at that point where it's like, okay, we do need to expand. So we brought him on, and that's been 6 years ago. So it's the three of us. We're now kind of getting to that point again where we're growing a lot, and do we keep growing, or do we just kind of stay the three of us? So that's like why I say you have to have something to bring to the table. Like, he had a lot of good relationships, especially with administrators, the fiscal analysts, the ledger research, all those entities. That just, it was, he brought a lot to the table. So
can you talk a little bit more about how you take a need from one of your clients, something of their agenda, and kind of how that goes
through the process?
Gain traction through the different legislatures and all the different people involved.
So a client will, the question was, tell a little bit more about the process of how you actually perform for your clients. So a client will say, we want to pass, so I'll take an issue that I worked on last year. Actually, I'll take a different issue. So I represent Rocky Mountain Power, and we had a really big piece of legislation. It was probably 7 bills in one bill. It did a lot of different initiatives. And so first of all, we had to find a sponsor. So you find a bill sponsor, and they open a bill file. And then Ledge Research starts drafting. And depending upon how sophisticated your business is, your client, they can draft for you too and give to Ledge Research and say, here's the bill. Ledge Research will always rewrite it, but sometimes it's helpful for them to have a place to start. So the legislative research always drafts every single bill. So they'll draft the bill, and then you go out and you start educating, because you need 35 votes in the House, you need 15 in the Senate, and then you need 1 in the governor's office. So you go and you start vote counting. I mean, just kind of like what you see in the movies. You meet with legislators and you give them your pitch, and they say, yeah, I'm all on board, or yeah, this I don't support this at all, or I would support it, but you probably need to tweak this, or maybe you should take that out. So it's just this big process of negotiation, and you just are trying to get your numbers to pass the bill. So you work really hard to get those bills. A really good legislator is someone you don't have to talk to, and I'll tell you why. Because you already know how they're going to vote. Because they're so core principled, you know exactly if they're going to be with you or if they're going to be against you. The worst legislator is, yeah, I need to read the bill. I need to listen to the debate. I mean, that's just a I don't know where I'm at. And I can take no all day long. I can take a no all day long. You tell me no, I'm fine. I move on, and guess what? I don't bug you anymore. But when you sit there and you say, I just don't know where I'm at. Well, I got to keep coming back and talking to you about it. So you move it through a the first part is a body of origin, so House or the Senate standing committee. Passes that, then you go to the body of origin, so the House or the Senate floor, and you get your votes there, and then you start the process over in the next body. So if you started in the House, then you do that process in the Senate. And it passes, and then it goes down to the governor's office, and the governor's office has an option to sign it. That means they agree with it, I want this to come into law, sign it, or they can veto it and say, nope, I don't agree with this. Or they can just not take any action, and if he doesn't take any action, then it automatically becomes law. So it's important. I mean, you've got both bodies, and then you've got that one who's really important that can, and I have lost bills by veto. And I've also overridden vetoes, which is hard to do too. Anyone else? Yes?
Do you guys have interns?
Yeah, we do. We have had interns. And I'm actually looking for an intern. The problem that I have with interns is this, and this is my own problem. It takes me longer to teach you to do it than it does for me to do it. So I have to be very mindful that, okay, this is a process that I'm teaching you to learn something, not just me getting it done and not checking the box. So the last couple interns have been a lot more successful. I also I'm the president of the Lobbying Association, which is all the lobbyists in the state, and I hire a lot of lobbyists for that. And even lobbyists need lobbyists, so. Yes?
Have you ever lobbied for a bill that challenged your personal ethics?
It is an excellent question. Yes. So the question was, have you ever lobbied for something that challenged your ethics or something you didn't believe in? I took a client one time that I clearly was not on the same page as them. And I told my business partner at the time, you're probably going to have to take more of the lead on this because I just, philosophically, I just don't believe it. So that client didn't last very long because of that. And I was able to give them a recommendation for someone who could really help them. That was more in their scope of work, that would believe in their ideals more than I did. So that was a good lesson to me, and I haven't done it since that. What I have done since then is just told, and we're big enough now that we don't have to take everything that comes in the door. We can say, you know what, we don't have the bandwidth for that, but I always give a recommendation, and I always try to find the best person for that person. So I've learned my lesson. I did that once, and it was a big internal struggle for me. So now, not to say that everything my clients do I agree with, because sometimes they come up with ideas, and it's like, no, that's not going to work. And that's what this whole legislative process is about: is the give and take. Rarely does a bill that is introduced pass in the form it was introduced. It's usually always negotiated. And I do that a lot with my clients and say, you know what, you're just not going to get that. So let's move down this path, or I don't agree with, the legislature's not going to agree with that. So it's always changing. So not every client, every issue do I 100% agree with. But usually at the end of the day, it's a good product because it's been through the mix, it's been through the ringer, it's been negotiated.
Joe, we probably have time for one quick last question.
Okay?
I'd just like to know a little bit about what was your first step in starting the school, because I know I look at something and I'm like, yeah, that seems like a really great idea, but I have no idea where to even start.
So there's a whole process. First, you just go to the Board of Education and say, I want to start a charter school. What is the criteria? And it's a whole, it's like a pamphlet that they give you. So that's the other one. It's you can hire an education foundation to help you. You can partner with someone. One of the best ways is to have a support system. So all my friends that we started it together was like, okay, we've got this idea, we're going to do it. And we just went and got it done. It's just but it is a process. It is not for the weak, I will tell you that. It is, there's a reason why there's so much. And it's, you're using public funds for it. It's not like I'm funding it. It's a public education product, so I've got to make it worthy of that. So there's a lot of stuff. If you're really interested in it, I'll give you my contact information. We can chat about it.
So let me jump in here and just say thank you so much for, it's an hour roughly for us. It's an entire day for our speakers to come down here. So please join me in thanking Jodi for coming down today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you.